Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The rain came softly that evening, whispering against the towers of Hogwarts, as if afraid to wake the castle. Beyond the black waters of the lake, thunder rolled and faded into the distance, and the sky burned with the last traces of violet dusk. Within the great hall, candles floated lazily beneath the bewitched ceiling, casting a warm glow over hundreds of students settling in for supper. Harry Potter sat beside Ron and Hermione, half listening to Ron's tale of a Quidditch practice gone wrong. You should have seen Sloper's face when the bludger nearly took his head off. Ron laughed, waving a chicken leg for emphasis. Hermione, of course, was unimpressed. You shouldn't laugh, Ron. Someone could have been seriously hurt. Ron grinned. He's fine. George fixed him up straight away. Harry smiled faintly, his attention wandering. Something about the evening felt strange. The air shimmered faintly as though the castle itself were holding its breath. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, his shadow, stretching across the flagstone floor. But for a heartbeat too long, it didn't move when he did. He blinked. The shadow caught up, snapping back into place. Hermione noticed his pause. Harry, what is it? Nothing, he said quickly. Just thought I saw... But he didn't finish. How did one explain seeing one's shadow act of its own accord? He forced a laugh, shaking it off. Just tired, I guess. Still, through the rest of dinner, his eyes kept drifting toward the floor. That night, the castle slept uneasily. Portraits whispered in their frames. The wind howled down the corridors like a living thing. And in the dark, where candlelight dared not reach, shadows moved. Softly, deliberately. By morning, rumors had already spread. Neville Longbottom swore he saw his own shadow tip his inkwell onto his homework. Parvati Patil claimed hers had winked at her in the mirror. Peeves the poltergeist, gleeful at the chaos, zoomed through the corridors cackling, "The shadows are waking! The shadows are waking!" Until Professor McGonagall banned him from the upper floors entirely. At breakfast, Hermione had 3 books open before her and a quill scratching furiously. There's nothing in the standard book of spells about shadows behaving independently, she muttered, or in magical maladies and curses of the body. Maybe it's some kind of prank, Ron suggested through a mouthful of toast. Hermione frowned. A prank that affects the entire castle? Unlikely. Harry didn't say it aloud, but the unease from the night before hadn't left him. He felt watched, not by eyes, but by darkness itself. Later that day, during Defense Against the Dark Arts, Professor Umbridge prattled on about orderly magical conduct, while Harry's gaze drifted to the sunlight spilling across the floor. Again, his shadow stretched beside him, and then before his eyes, it twitched. Not as if moved by the light, but as if something inside it had stirred. The next instant, it lunged, an echo of his own movement, a fraction too fast. He gasped and nearly dropped his quill. "Mr. Potter!" Umbridge snapped from the front of the room, her face pinched and pink. "Is something amusing you?" Harry swallowed. "No, ma'am." "Then kindly cease your dramatics." The class snickered, and Harry forced his eyes away from the floor. But he could feel it now, the pull of his shadow like a living tether beneath him, restless, straining. When the bell finally rang, Hermione caught his arm. "Harry, what happened?" I think it moved again," he said under his breath. Ron frowned. "What do you mean, again?" Before Harry could answer, the torches along the corridor flickered. The hallway darkened. A dozen students froze mid-step as every shadow lengthened, stretching toward the same direction, as though drawn by a single force deep within the castle. Then, as quickly as it began, the light returned. "What was that?" Dean Thomas whispered. No one answered. That evening, Harry, Ron, and Hermione gathered in the common room, the firelight dancing across their faces. "This isn't just some magical quirk," Hermione said, pacing before the hearth. "It's happening to everyone. I checked with Hannah Abbott. She said she woke up to find her shadow missing entirely." "Missing?" Ron repeated. "As in gone?" "Vanished," Hermione confirmed, like it detached itself completely. Harry felt a chill. "Then where do they go?" Hermione's brow furrowed. "That's what I'm trying to find out. I've been searching through every record of enchantments affecting light or darkness. There was one mentioned centuries ago of a spell that bound shadows for protection, but the details were lost." "Lost?" Ron asked. She nodded. "Supposedly cast by one of the early headmasters, a man named Phineas Nigellus Black." Harry's eyes widened. "Sirius's ancestor." Hermione closed the book with a soft thud. "If this spell still lingers somehow, and it's unraveling..." She didn't finish the thought. She didn't have to. The fire flickered low. Around them, the walls seemed to lean closer, the flames casting tall, uncertain shapes that twisted and trembled. And just beyond the circle of light, something dark watched and waited. That night, as Harry drifted into uneasy sleep, his last thought was not of Voldemort or prophecies or Umbridge's cruel smile. It was the feeling of something tugging softly at the edge of his bed. When he opened his eyes, his shadow was standing, and it did not move when he did. Harry froze. The moonlight spilled faintly across the dormitory, painting silver shapes upon the floor. Around him, the other boys slept soundly, Neville snoring softly, Ron muttering in his dreams. But Harry's eyes were fixed upon the dark outline that should have lain harmlessly beneath him. It was standing. The shadow rose upright beside his bed, its edges rippling like black smoke. It had his shape, his wild hair, his narrow shoulders, but its eyes, if they could be called that, glimmered faintly with a dull, silvery gleam. Harry's breath caught in his throat. The shadow did not attack, nor did it move toward him. It simply watched. A chill filled the room, a cold that had nothing to do with the night air. "Ron," Harry whispered hoarsely. "Ron!" Ron groaned, half asleep. "What is it?" But by the time Ron sat up, rubbing his eyes, the shadow had vanished, melting soundlessly into the darkness beneath Harry's bed. Harry's pulse pounded in his ears. It was standing. My shadow was standing, Ron. Ron blinked blearily. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Ron shuddered. "Bloody hell. Shadows don't just stand up, Harry." "I know," Harry said grimly. But it did. They slept no more that night. By morning, Hermione had heard the whole story, and her expression was a mixture of disbelief and dread. "I think," she said carefully, "we need to see Professor McGonagall." But even McGonagall's composure faltered when she heard them out. She sat very still, hands folded upon her desk, her sharp eyes unreadable. "Mr. Potter," she said finally, "this castle has seen many strange things, but shadows taking form, that is not a matter to be taken lightly. I will inform the headmistress immediately. For now, remain vigilant and do not wander the corridors alone after dark." "Yes, Professor," Harry said, though he doubted even Dumbledore, were he still there, would have known what to make of this. That evening, word of the incident had somehow spread, and as things at Hogwarts always did, the atmosphere grew tense. Laughter dwindled to whispers. Students hurried through corridors, clinging to the pools of light cast by their wands. Then came the first disappearance. A Hufflepuff fourth year named Amelia Knott failed to return from the library after curfew. The next morning, Filch found her wand lying in an empty corridor, her bag still full of books, but no trace of her anywhere. Hermione's face went pale when she heard. "Harry, what if the shadows aren't just misbehaving? What if they're taking people?" Ron tried to sound braver than he felt. "That's mad, Hermione. They're just, well, shadows." "Exactly," she said sharply. "And that's what makes it terrifying." That night, determined to find the truth, they crept from the Gryffindor common room under the invisibility cloak. The castle was silent save for the faint groan of shifting stone. Their footsteps echoed softly as they moved along the dim corridors, the light from Harry's wand spilling over old portraits whose painted eyes followed them with anxious curiosity. "Lumos," Hermione whispered, her wand trembling slightly. They had reached the fourth floor corridor when Harry stopped suddenly. "Do you hear that?" A faint whisper drifted from around the corner, a voice low and sorrowful. It wasn't Peeves nor any student they knew. It sounded old, tired, and it spoke in a language none of them recognized. Hermione swallowed hard. "It's coming from that archway." They turned the corner. The air there felt heavy, as though filled with unseen weight. The torchlight flickered, stretching their shadows long across the walls. And then, as they watched, one of the shadows detached. It peeled itself from the stone like mist, forming a vague shape, neither man nor beast. Ron stumbled back. "Merlin's beard." The thing turned toward them, faceless yet somehow aware. Its whisper deepened, a chorus of many voices speaking as one. "You should not have come." Harry's hand tightened on his wand. "Who are you?" The shadow's form quivered. "We are bound. We are many. We are what remains." Hermione's voice trembled. "Bound to what?" "To the castle. To the master who forgot us." Before they could move, the shape lunged, its body dissolving into smoke that coiled toward them like a tide of ink. Harry shouted, "Protego!" The shield flared to life, and the shadow struck it with a shriek that echoed through the hall. Then it was gone. Ron leaned against the wall, panting. What in the name of Dumbledore's beard was that? Hermione's mind was already racing. It said it was bound, and it mentioned a master. Her eyes widened. Phineas Nigellus Black. He must have bound the shadows centuries ago. Whatever he did, it's unraveling now. Harry nodded grimly. Then we'll find out how to stop it. For days they searched the library, diving into every dusty tome of Hogwarts history. Madame Pince glared at them, muttering about reckless children disturbing sacred shelves. But Hermione refused to stop. Finally, deep within chronicles of the early wardens of Hogwarts, she found it, a passage written in spidery ink. In his fear of betrayal, Headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black wrought a spell to make the shadows of Hogwarts his silent watchmen. They were given mind and will, that they might see where eyes could not. Yet the magic was flawed, for what has a will may one day refuse to obey. Hermione read the words aloud, her voice barely a whisper. He gave them will. Ron swallowed. So they're alive? Alive enough, she said softly, and angry. That evening the castle trembled, windows rattled, torches flared and died. The darkness that followed was not the ordinary absence of light. It was thicker, heavier, as if alive. Students screamed in the distance. Harry, Ron, and Hermione burst into the corridor, wands raised. All along the walls, shadows stirred, hundreds of them, sliding like black water, crawling up the ceilings, pooling together into a single vast shape. The whispers returned, filling every corner of the castle. Umbra. The word rang in Harry's mind, deep and resonant. Hermione gasped. That's its name? The guardian Phineas created? It's awake. Then before their eyes, the great shape condensed, forming something that loomed above them, neither human nor creature. Two hollow eyes opened, burning faintly like coals. You are children of light, the voice boomed, echoing from every wall. But the light has forgotten its debt. I was made to guard, yet none remember me. None command me now. The floor shook as Umbra's shadowed limbs unfurled, reaching toward them. Harry stepped forward. Then tell us how to make this right. Umbra's gaze burned brighter. Make it right. The laugh that followed was low and terrible. You cannot undo what was bound in darkness. The castle is mine now. The torches went out, and the world fell into shadow. When the torches went out, the silence was absolute. The air itself seemed to fold in upon them, thick and suffocating, as if the darkness had weight. For a moment there was no sound but the faint hum of Umbra's voice echoing in their skulls. Then a tremor ran through the stones beneath their feet, and the darkness moved, alive, breathing. Lumos Maxima, Harry cried, thrusting his wand upward. A brilliant burst of white light exploded in the corridor, scattering the shadows like startled birds. The creature recoiled, its edges shivering and fading, but only for an instant. The light dimmed, swallowed almost greedily by the darkness that pressed in from all sides. You cannot burn what is born of absence, Umbra's voice murmured, close and distant all at once. I am the unlit hour between heartbeats. I am every fear you cast aside. Harry, Hermione shouted, the light isn't enough. We have to move now. They ran. The corridor twisted before them, the castle shifting as if to block their escape. Staircases slid away, doors slammed shut of their own accord. Portraits cried warnings, their painted figures fleeing from frame to frame as the shadows crept up their canvases. They reached the grand staircase just as the first archway crumbled behind them, swallowed by black mist. Ron turned, gasping. It's following us. Hermione's mind raced. We need a ward, something ancient, something the castle will recognize. Harry reached for the one spell he remembered from the old defense tomes Dumbledore once mentioned. He raised his wand and shouted, Expecto Patronum. From the tip of his wand burst the silver stag, radiant and pure, antlers gleaming like moonlight. The light drove the darkness back, searing holes through the encroaching shadow. Umbra's voice shrieked in fury. Ah, the guardian of light! But even silver fades in time. The stag lowered its antlers, charging at the dark mass. But as it struck, the shadow shattered into mist, reforming moments later at the far end of the hall. The stag stumbled, flickered, and vanished. The silence that followed was dreadful. Hermione clutched Harry's arm. That wasn't a defeat. It retreated. The Patronus still hurts it, but not enough, Ron said grimly. They stumbled into the great hall, where the enchanted ceiling now mirrored a sky of swirling black clouds. The candles that usually floated overhead were gone. In their place hovered faint, ghostly lights that flickered like dying embers. Harry could feel Umbra's presence here most strongly, a vast awareness that filled the hall from floor to vaulted ceiling. And then he saw them, the missing students. Shadows clung to the walls, hundreds of them, shapes of boys and girls frozen mid-motion. Each figure was only darkness, but Harry recognized their stances, the way they seemed trapped in the act of reaching for help. Hermione covered her mouth. "Oh no, they're alive in there!" Umbra's voice rolled through the hall like thunder. "They are mine now. Those who forget their fear must live within it. But you, Harry Potter, you understand darkness better than most. You carry it inside you." Harry stepped forward, defiant despite the chill crawling over his skin. "I've faced worse than you." "Have you?" the voice whispered. "You think the light you wield is your own? That stag you summon, it is but a reflection of your fear, tamed for a moment. I am what remains when the fear learns to stand alone." Hermione's eyes widened as she flipped through the tome she'd carried from the library, pages fluttering wildly. "Harry, it says here that Umbra was made to obey the will of Hogwarts itself, the magic that binds the castle together. If we could reach the heart of that magic, we might command it again." Ron frowned. "And where's the heart of a castle?" Hermione hesitated. "Beneath the Grey Hall, in the Founder's Chamber." Harry stared at her. "That's just a myth." "So were shadows that walk," she replied firmly. Before Umbra could react, they dashed toward the dais where the staff table once stood. The stones there were ancient, carved with faint runes that pulsed softly under Hermione's wand light. She traced the runes quickly, murmuring, "Alohomora, Portus, Aperio Antiqua." The floor groaned. With a deep rumble, the stones parted to reveal a spiral staircase descending into utter blackness. Cold air rushed upward, carrying the scent of dust and earth and something older than both. "Go!" Hermione cried. They plunged down the stairs, the trapdoor ceiling above them just as Umbra's furious roar shook the hall. The descent seemed endless. Their footsteps echoed on damp stone, and faint whispers drifted up from below, snatches of ancient voices, too old to understand. When at last they reached the bottom, they found themselves standing before an immense circular door of obsidian. 4 symbols were carved upon it: a lion, a badger, a raven, and a serpent, each set with a faintly glowing gem. "The Founder's sigils," Hermione breathed. "We have to open it." "How?" Ron asked. She raised her wand, voice steady. "By proving we're still what they built this school for: courage, loyalty, wisdom, and cunning." "Cunning?" Ron muttered. "Brilliant." Hermione ignored him. "We'll each take one. Harry, courage. Ron, loyalty. I'll take wisdom. And for cunning," a voice spoke from behind them, "perhaps I might be of service." They turned. From the shadows stepped Draco Malfoy, pale and wary, his wand drawn. "Malfoy," Ron hissed, "what are you doing here?" Draco's eyes flicked toward the stairs. "Following the only people who seem to know what's going on. The Slytherin's shadows went wild hours ago. One of them nearly strangled Pansy." Hermione hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. You'll do for cunning?" He smirked faintly. "High praise, Granger." Each stepped to their emblem and placed a hand upon the stone. A pulse of magic rippled outward, the runes glowing brighter as if recognizing them. The door shuddered, then slowly slid open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in faint silver light. The Founder's Chamber. Pillars of marble surrounded a circular dais at its center. Inlaid in the floor was a great symbol of Hogwarts, and above it hung a crystal sphere suspended in midair, a swirling core of light and shadow, intertwined. Hermione whispered in awe, "That's the heart of Hogwarts, the magic Phineas tried to bind." But the wonder was short-lived. The air darkened. Umbra's voice thundered from every corner. "You seek to awaken what even I cannot control." The shadow poured into the chamber like a storm, its form rising again, immense and writhing. "Then we'll end what you began," Harry shouted, raising his wand. Light burst forth, striking the creature's chest, but Umbra absorbed it effortlessly. "Your light belongs to me, boy." "Not all of it," Hermione cried. "Together now." They joined hands around the dais, their wands touching the glowing sphere. Power surged through them, a current older than any spell they had ever known. The chamber shone with golden light, and for a heartbeat they heard voices whispering, not in fear but in pride. The Founders. The sphere flared, its light piercing Umbra's form. The shadow screamed, not in pain but in fury. "You cannot command me. I am bound to disobedience." Then came the twist. The light flickered, faltered, and began to dim. Hermione gasped. "It's rejecting us. It knows we're not the true masters." Harry's heart pounded. "Then who is?" The answer came in a whisper from the sphere itself, soft as breath. "The one who bears the castle's legacy. The head." Their eyes widened. Professor McGonagall. But above them, far beyond reach, Umbra had already begun to surge upward toward the Great Hall, toward the heart of Hogwarts itself. Harry turned to his friends, determination blazing in his eyes. "Then we find her before the castle belongs to the dark." And as they began to climb once more, the shadows howled like a gathering storm. The climb back through the winding stair was like ascending through a storm of darkness. The walls trembled. Dust fell in slow drifts from the unseen ceiling. The further they rose, the heavier the air became, as if the castle itself struggled to breathe. Behind them, the echo of Umbra's voice rolled like thunder, distant yet everywhere. Hermione led the way, wand raised, her face pale in the flickering light. Ron followed close behind, muttering under his breath, "Next time, let's just play a game of wizard chess. Much safer." "Keep moving," Harry urged. "If Umbra reaches the Great Hall first." He didn't need to finish. They all knew what that would mean. When they burst through the trapdoor at last, the hall was unrecognizable. The enchanted ceiling was gone entirely, replaced by a swirling mass of darkness, so thick it seemed to pulse like a living thing. Tables lay overturned, candles shattered. The once bright banners of the 4 houses hung in tatters, their colors drowned in shadow. And at the center of it all, beneath the vanished stars, stood Umbra. Its form was taller now, nearly touching the ceiling, its body a vortex of living blackness. Faces appeared and vanished within it, whispers overlapping like waves. All around, students huddled together in terror, their shadows writhing on the floor like living serpents. Professor McGonagall stood near the dais, her wand drawn, her eyes fierce despite the chaos. Bolts of light shot from her wand in steady rhythm, but each spell was swallowed whole before reaching its mark. Harry ran to her side. "Professor," her eyes flicked toward him briefly. "Potter, what in Merlin's name is this creature?" "Umbra," Hermione said breathlessly. "A spell gone wrong. It's the castle's own guardian, awakened and out of control." McGonagall's jaw tightened. Then we shall unmake it. All of you fall back behind me. Umbra's laughter filled the hall, cold and resonant. Unmake me? You cannot destroy what has no form, no heart, no beginning. Its eyes, two pale, lidless voids, turned toward McGonagall. You are the one they call headmistress now. Then you are my master. For a moment the hall fell utterly silent. McGonagall's wand trembled just slightly. If you were truly bound to serve Hogwarts, you would obey me. The voice deepened. To serve or to bind? With a sudden motion, Umbra's vast arm extended, wrapping around her like smoke made solid. The headmistress gasped as her wand flew from her hand, clattering across the floor. "Professor!" Harry shouted, darting forward, but a wall of shadow erupted before him, forcing him back. Hermione's mind raced. It's testing her. It doesn't recognize her authority completely. There must be a way to make the castle accept her. How? Ron demanded, ducking as a streak of darkness lashed overhead. By proving she's the rightful heir to the Founder's will, Hermione said, scanning the room frantically. We need to connect the heart of Hogwarts to her. Harry turned to Draco, who had remained a few paces behind, his face ghostly white. You helped open the chamber. Can you reopen it from here? He hesitated only a moment. I think so. The enchantments run through the whole foundation. Hermione nodded. Then do it. Draco knelt, placing both hands on the cracked floor. He closed his eyes, muttering in Old Latin, the language of the castle's earliest spells. The runes along the dais began to glow faintly once more, thin lines of gold creeping outward like veins of fire. Umbra roared, feeling the shift in power. The shadows writhed in fury, striking at the students. Harry raised his wand, shouting, Expecto Patronum. The silver stag burst forth again, brighter this time, joined by a swan from Cho Chang, a fox from Ginny, and a wolf from Dean Thomas. Dozens of Patronuses flared across the hall, filling the darkness with argent light. The shadows screamed and recoiled, slithering back toward the walls. Hermione turned to McGonagall, who still struggled against the smoky tendrils binding her. Professor, you must reach the dais. The castle will only respond to your command. With a mighty effort, McGonagall wrenched one arm free. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and sharp as steel. Hogwarts, heed your keeper. The runes blazed gold. A wind rose from nowhere, sweeping through the hall like a gale. Umbra staggered back, its edges unraveling as the ancient stones themselves began to glow. You cannot banish me, it hissed, voice shattering into a dozen tones. I am your shadow. McGonagall's eyes flashed. Every light casts one, but it is the light that commands. She lifted her wand high, and for a heartbeat the entire castle seemed to awaken. Statues stirred, armor clanged, portraits shouted spells of encouragement. The ceiling itself split open to reveal a sudden, radiant moon. Umbra shrieked as the silver light struck it, full in the chest. For an instant it began to dissolve, but then, impossibly, it steadied. The shadows drew inward, compacting into a smaller, denser shape. Harry felt the change immediately. The magic was turning inward, focusing, compressing itself into something solid. A figure began to emerge from the mass, tall, robed in black, with eyes like dull mercury. Umbra had taken human form. Now, it said softly, its voice no longer a storm, but a whisper edged with contempt. Now you may see the face of what you created. Its features were eerily familiar, refined, almost noble. Hermione gasped. It looks like Phineas Nigellus. Umbra smiled faintly. He bound me in his likeness. I was his last safeguard, his living shadow. When he died, I remained, and in time, I learned to think. McGonagall's wand trembled. You learned rebellion. I learned freedom. With a flick of its hand, a wave of darkness swept across the hall, snuffing out the Patronuses one by one. Harry felt the cold sink into his bones again as the world dimmed. Your light tires, Umbra said, stepping forward. Your courage fades, and the castle, oh, the castle knows me still. Hermione's voice broke through the gloom, fierce and desperate. Not if we reminded who truly guards this place. She raised her wand toward the shattered banners, shouting, Hogwarts Unitas. The fragments of color lifted from the ground, scarlet, gold, blue, green, spinning through the air until they wove together above the dais, forming the crest of Hogwarts itself. Its golden outline flared brilliantly, and the lion's roar filled the hall. Umbra staggered, clutching its chest as the light burned through its form. You cannot erase me, it rasped. I am the proof that light breeds darkness. Then be bound by the light once more, McGonagall declared. She brought her wand down in a sweeping arc. The crest flared blindingly bright. There was a sound like a sigh, deep, endless, and Umbra collapsed, its form breaking apart into 1,000 fragments of shadow that swirled upward and vanished through the ceiling like smoke caught in the wind. Silence. The hall was still. The darkness lifted. Slowly the torches rekindled themselves one by one. The enchanted ceiling shimmered back into place, showing the dawn creeping over the horizon. Students began to rise shakily from where they had fallen, murmuring in disbelief. The shadows at their feet lay still once more, obedient, ordinary. Hermione exhaled, shoulders trembling with exhaustion. It's over, she whispered, but Harry did not answer. He stood staring at the spot where Umbra had vanished, a lingering chill settling over his heart. Because even as the light returned, he thought he saw, just for a moment, a flicker of movement beside his feet. His shadow had smiled. The first morning after the battle dawned, pale and uncertain. The castle steeped in the stillness that follows great storms. Though sunlight filtered through the high windows of the great hall once more, its warmth felt hesitant, as if even the day feared to disturb the memory of the night before. Students moved quietly through breakfast, their voices low, glancing often at the floors and walls as though expecting the shadows to twitch again. The air carried the uneasy hush of those who had looked upon something they could not forget. At the staff table, Professor McGonagall sat straighter than ever, though her face was drawn. A new weariness marked her eyes. She had sent messages to the ministry, to the Board of Governors, even to the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. Yet none of that mattered to her as much as the silence and the stones beneath her feet, the absence of that strange breathing darkness. Hermione, sitting across from Harry and Ron, stirred her porridge mechanically. The castle feels different, she said at last, as if something's missing. Ron gave a weak laugh. Good. Let it stay missing. But Harry's gaze was distant, fixed upon the sunlit floor. Sometimes it's not what's missing that's worrying, he murmured. It's what's left behind. Hermione frowned but said nothing. After classes resumed that afternoon, life seemed determined to pretend at normalcy. Lessons continued, quills scratched, Peeves hummed tunelessly in the rafters, but now and then a torch guttered for no reason, or a window darkened though clouds did not pass. It was subtle, just enough for the hairs on one's arms to rise. That evening, as they made their way back from the library, Hermione paused suddenly. "Wait. Do you feel that?" "Feel what?" Ron whispered. "The cold." Indeed, the corridor had grown strangely chill. Though no drafts blew through, the light from their wands dimmed slightly, flickering as if strained. Harry's heart began to pound. He turned and saw, far down the passage, a faint shimmer against the stone, a dark ripple, almost invisible. They approached slowly, and there it was. A mark burned faintly into the wall, the outline of a hand, darker than shadow. Hermione reached toward it, then stopped short. "It's warm," she breathed. "Harry, this isn't Umbra. This is something else. Or what's left of it," Harry said grimly. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the face Umbra had worn, the likeness of Phineas Nigellus, proud and haunted, whispering of freedom and rebellion, and beneath it the faint, cruel smile that had flickered across his own shadow at dawn. He sat up in bed and stared down at the floor. Moonlight streamed through the window, spilling across the dormitory. Ron snored softly in the next bed. Harry's shadow lay still, but as he watched, the corner of it shifted, just barely, not enough to move, only enough to remind him it was there. The next morning, he sought out the portrait of Phineas Nigellus in the headmistress's office. The old wizard looked annoyed, as always, at being disturbed. "Potter," he drawled, "come to trouble me with your endless mysteries again?" Harry folded his arms. "I want to know what you did. How you made Umbra." Phineas arched an eyebrow. "Ah, so the shade remembers its maker. How charming. I see it gave you some difficulty." "You bound shadows to guard Hogwarts," Harry said, "and nearly destroyed it." "I protected it," Phineas corrected smoothly, "or so I believed. You cannot imagine, boy, how fragile this school once was. Intrigue, betrayal, the meddling of the ministry. I sought a sentinel that would never sleep, never question, never err." Harry's voice hardened. "You gave it will. You made it think." "Of course I did," Phineas snapped. "What use is obedience without understanding? But I underestimated thought's greatest flaw. It desires choice." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming faintly in the painted gloom. "Tell me, Potter, did it learn your face?" Harry hesitated. "It tried to." "Then it is not gone," Phineas said softly. "It cannot be destroyed, only contained. As long as the castle stands, its shadow stands with it." Hermione, who had come with him, stepped forward sharply. "Then we must strengthen the wards, reinforce the binding." Phineas gave a thin smile. "Ah, the clever witch. You could spend a lifetime trying to contain what was born from fear. But fear has a way of returning when the lights go dim." The portrait fell silent, eyes half-lidded, as if unwilling to say more. That night, Harry told Ron and Hermione everything. "So we didn't defeat it," Ron muttered. "We just locked it up again." Hermione shook her head. "No, we balanced it, light and dark. Neither can exist without the other. The problem is if one side forgets the other's there." Harry didn't answer. His thoughts were elsewhere, on the shadows that still stretched beneath the castle, silent and unseen. The following week passed uneasily. Classes continued, but the sense of something watching lingered. In the corridors, faint shapes moved at the edge of sight. When students whispered of hearing voices in the dark, the professors dismissed it as nerves. Then one morning, a scream echoed through the dungeons. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were among the first to reach the scene. A Slytherin girl, Isla Knott, Amelia's younger sister, stood trembling beside a wall where her own shadow was missing entirely. In its place was only that same burned outline of a hand. "Not again," Hermione whispered. Harry knelt beside the mark, his breath shallow. The stone was cold now, colder than before. McGonagall arrived moments later, robes billowing. Her expression hardened at the sight. "No one is to wander the corridors alone after sunset," she declared. "Prefects, escort all students to their dormitories immediately." But that night, as the castle settled into uneasy quiet, Harry could not obey. Something deep within him, call it instinct, call it the echo of a bond forged in shadow, pulled him downward. He took his invisibility cloak and slipped from the dormitory. The moon was thin and pale, the corridors vast and silent. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. The pull led him through the great hall, past the grand staircase, into the lower passages that even Filch seldom visited. The air grew damp, the walls slick with age. Finally he reached the old stone arch, where he and his friends had first met Umbra. The runes there still glowed faintly, but now the light was distorted, twisted. And then he heard it. A whisper, low and coaxing. "Harry." He turned sharply. "Who's there?" The voice came again from everywhere and nowhere. "You set me free once. Why fear me now?" Harry gripped his wand. "Umbra." The darkness thickened around him, and from it stepped the shape he feared most. Not the monstrous shadow, but himself. His double, eyes gleaming silver. "I am not your enemy," the shadow said gently. "I am what you hide. The anger, the doubt, the fear that you'll fail them again." "Stay back," Harry warned. But the shadow smiled, his own smile mirrored perfectly. "You can't destroy me. You never could. But you can accept me. Together we could protect this place better than light ever could alone." Harry hesitated, the wand trembling in his grip. For a moment the words rang true, tempting, logical, almost kind. Then he remembered Hermione's voice, firm and clear in the great hall. "Every light casts one, but it is the light that commands." He steadied himself. "No, you don't protect. You consume." The shadow's eyes darkened. "Then you'll see me again, when the light fades." And before Harry could speak, it dissolved into the stone, leaving only the faint warmth of its presence and the sound of quiet, mocking laughter echoing through the hall. He stood there for a long time, alone in the dark, the chill settling deep into his bones. Then he turned toward the stairs, whispering into the emptiness, "You can wait as long as you like. I'll be ready." Above him the castle sighed. Its torches flickered once, as if in warning, and the light held steady, barely. For now. Days passed, though time at Hogwarts had a peculiar way of stretching in the aftermath of dark magic. The sunlight returned, but its brightness seemed shallow, as though the very stones of the castle remembered too well what had moved through them. The laughter of students resumed, thin and forced, like birdsong after a storm, but beneath it lingered a hum of unease. Harry spoke little of what he had seen in the dungeons. He told Hermione and Ron only that the shadows were restless again. Hermione buried herself in research, her table in the library drowning beneath scrolls and tomes so ancient their titles had long faded from the covers. Ron watched her from across the parchment heap, muttering, "We're going to need another lifetime to finish this." Hermione barely looked up. "We may not have one. There's something strange about how Umbra's power behaves. It shouldn't still exist." The heart of Hogwarts restored balance that night, but the residual magic. It's almost as if it left a seed behind. A seed? Harry asked quietly. She nodded. Something growing in the castle's depths, something waiting. Ron frowned. Waiting for what? Hermione's eyes were dark. A host. The words sank into silence. For a few days, the fear of another attack held the school in check. Students kept to their common rooms. Even Peeves drifted through the corridors, less often humming to himself in uneasy tones. Yet the castle felt different, more alive, almost listening. Torches flickered without reason, staircases shifted at odd hours, and whispers followed those who walked alone. Then came the dreams. Harry was the first to suffer them. Every night he would wake, heart hammering, his mind full of visions half-remembered, corridors flooded in shadow, the faint glint of silver eyes, his own reflection speaking words he could not recall. Hermione soon confessed that she too dreamed of the same thing, the castle's silhouette rising against a moonless sky, its towers reaching like black fingers into the void. Ron tried to laugh it off, but on the third night he woke screaming. When they found him, his face was pale, his eyes wide and unfocused. "It was me," he whispered, "my shadow." It smiled, and then it turned its back and walked away. That morning, McGonagall called an emergency meeting of the prefects and heads of house. The great hall was hushed as she spoke. Students are to remain in pairs at all times. Curfews will be enforced, and should anyone experience unusual disturbances, dreams, whispers, or strange movements of light, you will report to your head of house immediately. Her gaze fell on Harry, Hermione, and Ron for a heartbeat longer than necessary. That night, however, the castle broke its own silence. It began in the astronomy tower, where a group of seventh years had been charting star movements. A sudden chill swept through the room, snuffing out their lanterns. By the time Professor Sinistra arrived, the students were gone. Only their shadows remained, pressed flat upon the floor in a perfect circle, each one faintly whispering their owner's name. McGonagall was there within minutes, wand blazing, voice sharp, as she sealed the tower with protective wards. The following morning the ministry arrived. Aurors swept through the corridors, their faces grim. Harry recognized one of them, Kingsley Shacklebolt, whose calm, deep voice carried through the hall as he spoke to McGonagall. Residual, dark energy. Old magic, whatever this is, it's feeding off the castle itself. McGonagall's lips tightened. Then it must end here. But the castle was not so easily purged. That evening, Harry and his friends sat before the fire in the Gryffindor common room. The flames burned low, their light stretching across the walls. Shadows danced and shimmered. Hermione spoke first. Phineas said Umbra can't be destroyed, only contained. If that's true, it's still bound to Hogwarts and to its creator's bloodline. Harry looked up sharply. The Black family. She nodded. Exactly. And who among them still carries that line? Ron's eyes widened. You mean Harry's mind leapt ahead of hers? Draco. They found him in the library, pale and irritable, surrounded by books he clearly hadn't been reading. What now, Potter? He said with his usual scorn, though his voice lacked its usual bite. Harry leaned across the table. Your ancestor, Phineas Nigellus, created Umbra. That means you're connected to it. If the shadow is looking for a host, Draco's sneer faltered. You think it's after me? We don't think, Malfoy, Hermione said firmly. We know the magic is tied to blood. The bond could be awakening through you. For a long moment, Draco said nothing. His pale hands clenched. "You don't understand," he said at last, his tone low. "There's a voice in my dreams. It calls me by name. It says I was meant to finish what he began." Hermione went still. "What do you mean?" But Draco rose abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "Forget it. You've got your hero complex, Potter. Deal with it yourself." He stalked off, but not before they saw it, the faint shimmer of movement under his feet, his shadow rippling as if restless. By the next morning he was gone. McGonagall organized search parties, but no trace of him could be found. Not in the dungeons, not in the grounds, not even in the Slytherin common room. Only a strange mark was discovered carved into the stones of the entrance hall. A serpent coiled around a torch. Harry's stomach sank as he recognized the symbol. It's calling him back to the source, the heart of Hogwarts. They descended again that night, through the hidden stair beneath the great hall, their wands gleaming against the slick stone. The runes glowed faintly ahead of them, pulsing like a heartbeat. When they reached the chamber, they found Draco standing before the crystal sphere, the heart itself bathed in cold silver light. His face was pale, his expression distant. "Draco!" Hermione called. "A step away from it." He turned slowly. "It speaks to me," he said softly. "It says the balance is wrong, that the light took too much. It needs darkness again." Harry took a cautious step forward. "That's not your voice talking. It's Umbra." Draco smiled faintly. "Maybe there's no difference anymore." The air grew thick. Shadows began to coil upward from the floor, wrapping around him like smoke. The crystal sphere flared brighter, and a faint pulse of darkness rippled through the chamber. Hermione shouted a spell, "Finite incantatum," but the shadows ignored her. They poured into Draco's form until his eyes gleamed silver white. Umbra's voice filled the hall again, quieter this time, but far more dangerous. "You tried to cage me. Now I wear a name in blood again. Let us see which master the castle obeys." The light from the sphere flickered wildly, the very walls groaning in protest. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm. "If it merges fully, we'll lose him, and Hogwarts with him." "Then we stop it," Harry said, raising his wand. Umbra, tilted his head, smiling. "You cannot fight shadow with a light, Harry Potter. One destroys the other. But without me, what will your light shine upon?" For a moment, Harry faltered. The truth of the words struck deep. But then he saw Draco's hand twitch, the faintest flicker of resistance beneath the darkness. "You're wrong," Harry said quietly. "Light doesn't destroy shadow. It defines it." He stepped closer, his voice steady now. "Draco, fight it. You're not your ancestor." Draco's lips parted, trembling. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Hermione joined him, her voice strong. "You don't have to be what he made you. Hogwarts belongs to all of us, light and dark alike." For an instant, the silver glow in Draco's eyes faltered. The shadows around him wavered. Harry raised his wand higher. "Lumos Maxima." The chamber exploded with blinding light. Umbra screamed, a sound like tearing wind, and the shadows tore free of Draco's body, twisting violently before being sucked back into the crystal sphere. The light dimmed, and Draco collapsed to the floor, breathing hard. Hermione knelt beside him, her face pale but determined. It sealed again, for now. But as the last tendrils of darkness vanished into the heart, Harry saw it, a faint silver crack spreading across the sphere's surface. He stared at it for a long time. The crack pulsed once, softly, like the echo of a heartbeat. The darkness was still alive, and somewhere deep within Hogwarts, it was waiting. The air in the Founder's chamber hung heavy and still. The last ripples of power faded into the walls, leaving behind only the faint hum of wounded magic. Harry stood over the crystal sphere, the heart of Hogwarts, watching the crack pulse faintly with each beat, like a second heart buried in the stone. Its light, once steady and pure, now flickered between gold and shadow. Hermione pressed a hand against her chest, still breathless. The spell worked. We drew Umbra out. Harry shook his head. Not completely. Look. She followed his gaze and saw it, the slow seep of darkness through the crack, thin as smoke, vanishing into the air. It's leaking, she whispered. Ron leaned heavily against a column, pale and shaken. Well, that's just brilliant. Can't Hogwarts ever stay normal for more than a week? Hermione's reply was sharp. This isn't a joke, Ron. That fissure could grow. The heart holds the balance between the four houses, the castle's foundations, everything. If it shatters, Hogwarts won't survive. Harry knelt beside the sphere, his reflection fractured by the crack. Then we have to fix it. Fix it? Ron repeated. With what? Spell tape? Hermione ignored him, flipping through a worn tome she had carried from the library. Her eyes darted over the runes inscribed within. There might be a way. The Founders used 4 relics to weave the original wards, objects that embodied their virtues. If we reunite them here, their power might mend the heart. Harry frowned. The relics? You mean the artifacts we destroyed? The Horcruxes? Not quite. Hermione's brow furrowed. Slytherin's locket was one, but corrupted. The others, Gryffindor's sword, Hufflepuff's cup, Ravenclaw's diadem, they're still tied to the school's essence. Together, they could restore the balance. Ron's eyes widened. You're saying we need to find them again? The swords with the goblins, the cups locked in the Ministry, and the diadem? Well, we all saw what happened in the Room of Requirement. Destroyed, yes, Hermione said, but perhaps not gone. Magic that ancient leaves traces, if even a fragment remains. Harry looked at the heart again. The faint tremor of its light called to him like breath through glass. Then we start with the sword. 2 days later, the 3 of them stood at the edge of the forbidden forest, their cloaks pulled tight against the chill. Beyond the tree line, the faint shapes of centaurs watched, silent and unmoving. Harry drew his wand, whispering, "Lumos." The soft glow revealed a trail of disturbed leaves, leading toward the ancient paths once guarded by Hagrid. Ron muttered, "You're sure this is where the sword ended up?" Griphook said he took it back to Gringotts after the war. He lied, Harry said quietly. Ragnuk, the new goblin chief, told Kingsley it vanished from their vaults years ago. And if it's gone, there's only one place it would return. Hermione nodded. To the one who truly needs it. They walked for what felt like hours, the forest whispering around them. The moon rose through the mist, pale and cold. Every now and then, Harry felt the brush of movement beside him. Shadows flickering between the trees, too fluid to be animals. When they reached the old clearing near the ruins of Aragog's nest, Harry stopped. The ground shimmered faintly under the moonlight, as though the air itself were bending. Then, without warning, the glow brightened, and from the soil rose a blade, gleaming silver, the rubies in its hilt burning like fire. "Gryffindor's sword," Hermione breathed. Harry stepped forward, reaching for it. But as his fingers closed around the hilt, the forest darkened. Every torchfly vanished, every shadow deepened. A voice spoke, soft and familiar. "You should not have come, Harry Potter. Harry froze. He knew that voice. From the trees stepped the faint outline of Dumbledore, his spectral form shimmering with pale light. His expression was kind yet distant. This magic belongs to Hogwarts now. It cannot be wielded again without price. Hermione's voice trembled. Professor, we need the sword to mend the heart. Dumbledore looked toward her, his gaze sorrowful. You seek to heal what was never meant to be whole. Umbra's shadow cannot be purged. It must be remembered. The castle itself breathes through the cracks. Ron scowled. So what, we just let it break apart? Dumbledore's image flickered, his voice fainter. There are truths Hogwarts has kept from even its masters. Find the room where no light dares stay. There lies the answer you seek. With that, the apparition faded, and the forest brightened once more. The sword remained, humming softly in Harry's hand. Hermione shivered. The room where no light dares stay? The old archives beneath the North Tower? Never heard of them, Ron said. You wouldn't have. They were sealed centuries ago. The archives were older than the rest of the castle, carved deep into the mountain rock, their entrance hidden behind a tapestry of a serpent devouring its own tail. Hermione whispered the unlocking charm, and the fabric melted away to reveal a narrow stair spiraling downward. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, until their breath hung silver in the dark. At the bottom waited a single wooden door bound in iron. Across its surface was carved a phrase in Latin, Lux in tenebris, cor in umbra. Hermione translated softly, light in darkness, heart in shadow. The door opened without a sound. Inside stretched a vast circular chamber filled with shelves of crumbling parchment and ancient relics. But what drew their eyes was the center, a mirror, tall and unbroken, framed in obsidian. Its surface rippled faintly like water. Harry felt his scar burn. The mirror of Arist, he whispered. I thought it was destroyed. It wasn't, Hermione said, her voice hushed. It was moved here after the war. Dumbledore must have hidden it again. As they approached, the mirror shimmered. Reflections bloomed across its surface, not of them, but of the castle itself, shadowed and alive. They saw Umbra's form moving through the corridors, silent and searching. Hermione pressed a hand against the glass. It's showing us what still lives within Hogwarts. The crack in the heart must have awakened its reflection. Harry's reflection turned toward him and smiled. He stumbled back. The shadow within the mirror stepped forward, matching his movement. Then its hand pressed to the inside of the glass, palm to palm. Harry, it whispered, the heart is calling. The crack widens. Come back below before the light blinds us both. The mirror flashed, flooding the room with white light. When it cleared, the reflection was gone, but so was the sword. Hermione gasped. It took it. Harry's voice was tight. Then it wants us to follow? Ron groaned. Brilliant. Walking straight into a trap set by a haunted mirror. But Harry's decision was already made. If the sword's part of the balance, we can't let Umbra keep it. He looked once more into the mirror, where faint shadows moved like distant figures beneath water. Then he turned toward the stairs. Come on. The heart's breaking, and the castle's shadow just stole its own salvation. As they ascended, the air grew heavier, the lights dimmer. Far above them, the ancient stones of Hogwarts trembled with the whisper of 1,000 shifting shadows, waking, watching, and waiting for the final reckoning between light and dark. The castle was restless that night. Wind moaned through the highest towers and the torches flickered like hearts on the verge of dying. Deep within the foundations, where the oldest stones still remembered the footsteps of the founders themselves, a low hum vibrated, a warning or perhaps a pulse. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed the trembling of that unseen current back toward the great hall. The light from their wands cut thin circles through the darkness. Every corner seemed to move. Every step echoed as though the walls were whispering in answer. Hermione moved quickly, her cloak brushing against the flagstones. The mirror showed us Umbra's reflection, but that wasn't just an illusion. It means the castle's shadow world is overlapping with ours. If that's true, then Hogwarts is splitting, light from dark. Ron scowled, his voice low. You mean there are two castles now? Brilliant. Twice the number of corridors to get lost in. Harry said nothing. His thoughts were on the sword, the way it had vanished into the mirror's depths. He could still feel its pull, sharp as a thread in his chest, tugging him downward toward the heart. As they neared the grand staircase, the temperature dropped. Frost crept along the banisters. From above came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone's coming? Ron whispered. Hermione's hand tightened on her wand. No, not someone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing in perfect rhythm with Harry's heartbeat. Then a figure stepped into view. It was Draco, or what remained of him. His eyes glowed faintly silver, and his movements were too precise, like a puppet guided by invisible strings. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, distant. You shouldn't have come back. Draco? Hermione asked, cautious. He smiled faintly, but the expression was wrong, too smooth, too practiced. He's resting now. I speak for him. Umbra's voice. Harry raised his wand. Where's the sword? The silver eyes brightened. Where it belongs, within the heart. The castle's pulse weakens. The light tries to consume its other half, and soon it will break. But you, Harry Potter, you could stop that. You could join it. Harry's grip tightened. You talk like you know me. I do. Umbra's tone softened. Every scar you carry, every shadow you've stood against, I was there. I am what you left behind each time you fought. I am the darkness that held the line when your courage faltered. Hermione stepped between them. You're nothing but an echo of fear. Am I? Umbra tilted his head. Then why do I speak with your friend's voice? Why does the castle still breathe my name? The torches flared and the walls shuddered. Harry's shadow stretched toward Umbra's feet, as if drawn to its twin. He forced it back by sheer will. You want me to surrender, he said, to become like you. Umbra's expression did not change. I want you to understand Hogwarts cannot live without balance. Every spell of light casts a shadow. Every victory breeds despair. The castle remembers both. I am the proof. The stone beneath them trembled. Cracks spread across the floor, glowing faintly with silver light. Hermione hissed, the fissures spreading, the hearts breaking faster. Harry met Umbra's gaze. Then I'll stop you again. You can't destroy what's inside you, Umbra whispered, but you can embrace it. Before Harry could answer, the floor erupted in light. The cracks split wide, swallowing them all. He fell through darkness. The descent felt endless, the air rushing past his face like water. Then, abruptly, his feet struck solid ground. He staggered forward and found himself standing in a place that was both familiar and wrong. The great hall, but not as it should be. The ceiling was gone, replaced by an endless void filled with drifting fragments of light. The tables were shadows of wood, translucent and trembling. At the far end of the hall, upon the dais, stood Umbra, no longer in Draco's form, but whole. Its body shimmered between man and smoke, its eyes like twin stars. "Welcome," it said, its voice echoing through the vastness. "You've crossed into the mirror's reflection, the castle as it remembers itself." Hermione and Ron appeared beside him, their faces pale. "We're inside Hogwarts' shadow," Hermione breathed. "This is what Umbra created." Ron pointed toward the dais. "Look." The heart of Hogwarts hovered there, the crystal sphere cracked open, its light bleeding into the void. Around it floated the relics, the sword, the cup, the diadem, drawn from whatever corners of magic still held them. They circled the heart like planets around a dying sun. Umbra raised a hand. "The founders built this fortress upon harmony, but harmony without shadow is tyranny. They feared the dark so much they chained it. I only broke the chains." "You nearly destroyed everything," Harry shouted. Umbra's gaze softened. "And yet here it stands. Every stone of this castle was born from both light and night. You think you defend Hogwarts, Harry Potter, but you defend only half of it." Hermione whispered, "He's trying to merge the relic's power, light and dark together. If he succeeds, the heart will collapse." Ron looked around wildly. "Then what do we do?" Harry's answer came instinctively. "We remind Hogwarts who it belongs to." He stepped forward, wand raised, voice steady. "This castle was built to teach us strength through knowledge, courage through fear. You were part of that once, Umbra. But you chose to rule instead of serve." Umbra tilted its head, intrigued. "And what would you have me do, Harry Potter? Vanish into silence again?" "Not vanish," Harry said quietly. "Return." He pointed his wand toward the heart. Light burst from its cracked surface, blinding in its brilliance. The relics shuddered and began to spin faster. Umbra screamed as the glow enveloped it, its form flickering. Hermione and Ron joined him, their wands raised. The hall trembled, the walls of shadow shaking under the pressure. "Now!" Hermione shouted. "Channel it through the sword." Harry seized the blade where it hovered, its ruby hilt burning hot. Power surged through him, ancient and wild. He saw the castle's memories flash before his eyes. Students through centuries, laughter and tears, triumphs and tragedies, all woven together. Umbra lunged, a storm of darkness. The sword met it, cleaving through the mist. The impact echoed like thunder. For a moment, everything froze. The light, the dark, the trembling air. Then the heart exploded in a wave of radiance that swallowed the hall. When Harry awoke, he was lying on the stone floor of the true Great Hall. Morning light streamed through the enchanted ceiling, warm and real. The tables stood whole again, the banners hung bright. Hermione sat beside him, her hand gripping his. Ron was nearby, blinking in confusion. "Is it over?" Harry asked, his voice hoarse. Hermione smiled faintly. "The heart's sealed. The crack is gone, and the relics vanished with it." Ron groaned softly. "I vote we never go near anything with the word ancient in it again." They laughed, weary but alive. Yet as the laughter faded, Harry looked down. His shadow stretched beside him, sharp and ordinary, but at its edge, for the briefest moment, a shimmer of silver passed through it, like moonlight caught in water. He said nothing, because deep down he knew the truth. Umbra had not been destroyed. It had simply gone home, to rest in the stones, to wait in the cracks, to breathe through the walls of Hogwarts. And someday, when light grew too proud, the shadow would rise again to remind it of its cost. Winter descended upon Hogwarts, silent and silver. Snow dusted the ramparts and covered the grounds. in a sheen of white that glowed under the pale sun. From the windows of the common rooms, the lake shimmered like glass, reflecting the mountains beyond. The air was crisp, the kind that carried every sound with eerie clarity. Yet beneath that beauty lay unease. Though the heart of Hogwarts had been mended, the castle had not forgotten. Its corridors whispered when no one was near. Doors closed softly of their own accord. Portraits blinked a heartbeat slower than they should have, as if something behind the canvas listened. Harry could feel it, the faint hum that never ceased, a low vibration beneath the soles of his boots. Sometimes late at night it grew louder, as though the very stones were breathing. One evening Hermione sat curled by the fire, a half-burned candle beside her, and a book heavy in her lap. "There's something strange in the headmistress's reports," she said, her brow furrowed. "She's noticed changes in the castle's layout. Staircases that never existed are appearing again. One passage opened into an entire corridor filled with ancient armor none of the staff recognized." Ron looked up from a game of wizard chess. "So the castle's growing new bits of itself? That's completely normal for Hogwarts, right?" Hermione shook her head. "Not like this. These aren't new. They're old. Forgotten parts reappearing. It's as if the castle's memories are resurfacing." Harry, who had been staring at the flames, finally spoke. "Or the shadows returning?" Neither of them answered, but their silence agreed with him. A week later, the first true blizzard swept across the Scottish Highlands. Snow piled against the castle walls, and wind howled through every crack. Classes were shortened, fireplaces roared from dawn till night. But with the storm came something else, a dream. Harry dreamt of corridors flooded with silver light. The heart of Hogwarts pulsed at the center, its rhythm deep and slow. Then a figure stepped from the glow. Umbra, calm and tall, his eyes no longer blazing with fury, but gleaming with something colder. "You sealed the wound," the voice murmured, "but every scar remembers." Harry tried to lift his wand, but the air itself held him still. "You and I are one," Umbra continued. "The castle breathes because we share its heartbeat. Deny me, and you deny the walls that protect you." The dream shattered like glass. He woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. The dormitory was dark, but not empty. A faint shimmer hung in the air near his bed, the outline of a figure that vanished as soon as he blinked. He didn't sleep again. By morning, news spread that one of the staircases had collapsed. No one was hurt, but the gap beneath revealed a buried chamber, sealed for centuries. McGonagall immediately ordered it closed, yet curiosity burned through the students like wildfire. Even Hermione's voice quivered when she said, "That chamber might hold records of the founders themselves." Harry met her gaze. "Then we have to see it." Ron groaned. "Of course we do. Merlin forbid we ever don't." That night, beneath the howling wind, they slipped from the common room under Harry's cloak. The corridors glowed faintly blue from the torches enchanted against the storm. Their footsteps echoed on the stone, muffled only by the endless rush of snow outside. They found the broken staircase just as Filch's lantern disappeared down another corridor. Dust hung in the air. Beneath the splintered steps yawned an opening, dark and cold. Hermione whispered, "Lumos." The light revealed a tunnel descending deep into the earth, its walls carved with runes so old their edges had worn smooth. The air smelled of damp stone and age. They followed the slope until it widened into a great circular room. In the center stood a statue, tall, robed, hooded. Its face was lost to shadow, but in its hands it held a basin filled with black liquid that shimmered like ink. "The pensive," Hermione breathed. "But it's wrong." Ron stepped back uneasily. "Looks more like a cauldron of nightmares." Harry approached. The surface of the liquid rippled and an image formed. Hogwarts, as it had been long ago. The towers were fewer, the halls lit by torchlight, and in the shadows between figures moved, thin, insubstantial, the castle's first ghosts. A voice echoed softly through the chamber. "Do you see now, Harry Potter? This is memory made flesh. The castle remembers everything, even me." Umbra's tone came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Hermione spun, her wand raised. "Show yourself." The shadows stirred, coiling along the walls like smoke. "You think you banished me?" the voice whispered. "But you only scattered me into dreams, into stone, into every whisper between candle and flame. Hogwarts and I are the same." "Then why speak to me?" Harry demanded. "Because I can no longer take," Umbra said. "Only offer." The shadows shifted again, and the basin's liquid began to glow with faint silver. "There is a deeper truth beneath the heart." What Phineas Nigellus bound was not only his fear, it was the castle's own will. It wanted eyes. It wanted a voice. I was both. But when he sealed me, he sealed its memory too. That is why it forgets itself, why it grows strange. Hermione stared at the basin, entranced. "If that's true, then the castle needs balance to remain alive. We mended the heart, but not its memory." Umbra's voice grew soft. "Restore the memory and you restore peace. But beware, the memory has teeth." The light faded. The basin went dark once more. For a long time, none of them spoke. Finally, Harry said, "Then we go deeper. Whatever's beneath the heart, whatever the castle remembers, we have to find it." It took 3 more days to prepare. Hermione gathered every map she could find of the school substructure, layering them over one another until faint pathways emerged. Tunnels long sealed, chambers forgotten. The lowest of them all led directly beneath the Great Hall. On the 4th night they descended again. The storm had quieted, but the castle creaked under its own weight, as though straining against the centuries that held it together. When they reached the Heart's Chamber, the air shimmered faintly with a new energy. The sphere pulsed brighter than before, its light fractured by faint threads of darkness swirling within. Hermione began tracing symbols on the floor with her wand, muttering incantations to reveal hidden paths. The runes flared gold, then turned blue, forming a spiral pattern that led toward a crack in the wall. "There," she said, "a doorway, cloaked by illusion." At her command, the wall melted away, revealing a stair spiraling down into blackness. They stepped through. The descent was long, the air thick and heavy. When at last they reached the bottom, the passage opened into a vast hall, a place older than Hogwarts itself. Columns carved with unfamiliar runes lined the walls. At its center lay an immense stone arch, cracked but still standing. The space beyond the arch shimmered like water. Ron whispered, "What is that?" Hermione's eyes were wide. "Memory, the living kind. A record of every moment the castle has known." Harry stepped closer and the arch flared with light. Visions unfolded within, the founders raising the first walls, their wands weaving magic into the stone. Then Phineas Nigellus appeared, older, colder, binding shadows into the mortar. The scene twisted, darkened, until Harry saw Umbra form. For for the first time. Born from the fear of betrayal, given life through the castle's pulse. The images shifted again, showing Hogwarts as it was now, split between light and shadow, breathing and sighing through centuries. Hermione whispered, "The memory isn't just of what was. It's still writing itself." Harry raised his wand toward the arch. "Then it's time we write the end." He stepped through. The world dissolved into light and shadow, memory and dream merging into one. Somewhere behind him, Hermione shouted his name, but her voice was already fading. As he crossed the threshold, the castle's voice spoke within his mind, ancient, vast, and trembling like wind through stone. "Welcome, child of light and dark. The memory has been waiting for you." Light and shadow folded over Harry like waves. There was no ground beneath his feet, no ceiling above, only the endless shimmer of memory. The air thrummed with whispers, voices layered atop one another, laughter, spells, cries, songs, the sound of centuries. He was standing in the memory of Hogwarts itself. Around him, towers rose and crumbled and rose again. The walls breathed, forming and unforming, built from mist and thought. The echo of the great hall shimmered in the distance, but its ceiling was made of stars that were not the same stars outside. Here, everything lived in a twilight between past and present, every moment folded upon the next. "Harry!" Hermione's voice came faintly from behind, and a moment later she and Ron stumbled through the arch. Their outlines flickered, blurred at the edges like reflections in moving water. Hermione's eyes widened in awe. "We're inside the castle's mind." Ron looked less impressed. "Feels like I swallowed one of Fred's fireworks." Before Hermione could reply, the ground beneath them shuddered. From the shifting mist ahead, figures emerged. Dozens, maybe hundreds, ghostly shapes cloaked in old robes, their eyes hollow and bright. They moved as one, surrounding the trio in perfect silence. "The Founders," Hermione whispered, "the castle's memory of them." But as they drew closer, it was clear these were no noble visages of legend. Their faces were cracked, their movements stiff, as though marionettes dancing to a tune long forgotten. Their eyes gleamed with something not quite human. One stepped forward. He was tall, proud, with a beard like flowing silver thread. A circlet rested upon his brow. "Why do you walk where memory sleeps?" Hermione swallowed hard. "We mean no harm. We seek to restore Hogwarts." The figure tilted his head. "Restore? The castle is whole. It breathes, it remembers, it dreams." "No," Harry said firmly. "It's dying. Umbra poisoned its heart." At the name, the circle of figures shifted, their expressions twisting. Whispers filled the air, soft, fearful, angry. The tall figure raised a hand, and the noise stilled. "Umbra," he repeated, his voice heavy, "the guardian we birthed from shadow and oath, the mistake we sealed away." "So you know," Hermione said quickly. "You saw what it became?" "We saw," he said, "but we also knew its purpose. We gave it will, because no light endures without shade. Umbra was not our failure, it was our reflection." Harry's heart pounded. "Then why did it turn against you?" "Because we forgot it." The Founder's gaze grew distant, and when you forget your shadow, it grows hungry. The words sank into the air like stones into water. Then the ground rippled again, and a crack of darkness split the memory in two. From within the rift, a form rose. Familiar, vast, terrible. Umbra. Its eyes burned silver as before, but its voice was no longer fury, it was sorrow. "You see, Harry Potter, even they understand. I was made to remember what others feared to face." The spectral founders recoiled, their faces flickering with anger and regret. The tall one, Godric Gryffindor, Harry realized, raised his sword, its edge blazing with light. "We chained you for the safety of our own. You were never meant to rise again." Umbra laughed softly. "And yet I rise, as I must. Because every child who learns courage breeds fear, and every fear returns to me. You cannot unmake what is bound to being." The memory cracked further. Shadows swallowed the lower half of the hall, the floor vanishing into endless dark. Hermione grasped Harry's sleeve. "If the memory breaks, Hogwarts breaks with it." He turned toward Umbra, feeling a pull deep in his chest, the same echo that had haunted him since the first night the shadows moved. "You said the castle, and you are one," he said. "If that's true, then you don't want to destroy it." Umbra's form rippled, voice quieter. "I want to be seen." Something shifted in Harry then, something he had long understood but never named. The darkness he'd carried through battles and nightmares was not an enemy. It was part of him, a reminder of what it meant to endure. He lowered his wand. "Then I see you." Umbra froze. "What did you say?" "I see you," Harry repeated, stepping forward. "Not as an enemy, but as what you are. Hogwarts' shadow, born to protect what others couldn't face." The spectral founders murmured in alarm, but Harry continued. "You weren't wrong to exist. Only forgotten." Umbra's shape wavered, its eyes flickering between silver and black. The air trembled, as if the whole world held its breath. Hermione caught on, her voice clear and strong. "Hogwarts needs its shadow. It always has. That's why it survived wars, curses, dark lords. Because its darkness was part of its strength." Ron blinked. "So we're not banishing it this time?" "No," Harry said softly. "We're giving it back its place." Umbra's form thinned to mist, drifting toward the cracked heart of the memory. The founders' ghosts raised their hands as though to protest, but then one by one their expressions softened. Helga Hufflepuff's kind voice echoed. "Light and dark, courage and doubt, knowledge and mystery. These were always meant to be one." The hall brightened, the cracks sealed. The ghostly figures began to fade. Umbra turned its gaze on Harry one last time. "When they forget you, remember me." And then it was gone. The memory dissolved. Harry felt the ground solidify beneath his feet again. Cold air brushed his face, and the weight of the real world settled upon his shoulders. He was back in the Heart's Chamber, Hermione and Ron beside him. The crystal sphere now pulsed evenly, its glow calm, no longer fractured by shadow. Within it, faint streaks of silver and gold intertwined like threads of living light. Hermione exhaled shakily. "It's over. For real this time." Ron rubbed his eyes. "Tell me we don't have to do that again." Harry didn't answer right away. He stood watching the heart, feeling something deeper than relief, something like peace. Above them, the stones hummed softly. The castle's heartbeat was steady once more. Yet in that rhythm, Harry thought he heard another pulse, echoing faintly. A whisper woven through the stillness. "I am here," he smiled faintly. "No," he murmured under his breath. "You're home?" In the days that followed, Hogwarts bloomed anew. The strange corridors faded, the dreams ceased, and warmth returned to the walls. Snow melted from the turrets, and spring crept gently across the grounds. At night, students swore. They sometimes saw a faint shimmer in the halls, a flicker of silver following the glow of lanterns, never threatening, only watching. When Hermione mentioned it, Harry merely smiled. let it watch? Because he understood now. Light did not destroy shadow, it defined it. And as long as Hogwarts stood, its shadow would stand with it, faithful, silent, and unforgotten. The castle of light and darkness breathed in harmony once more, a living memory of all who had ever called it home. Spring came late to Scotland that year, as though the land itself hesitated to trust in warmth again. Mist drifted over the lake each morning, curling like silver smoke about the towers, and the castle awoke to soft bird song echoing across the grounds. Life returned slowly, tenderly, and with it came the quiet sense that Hogwarts was healing. The heart deep below the great hall now pulsed evenly, its glow a mingling of gold and silver. Professors said the ancient wards had grown stronger than ever. The whispers in the corridors had gentled, the air hummed with calm. Yet for Harry, the peace carried an edge of restlessness. At night, when all the torches dimmed and the portraits fell silent, he often felt a presence at his shoulder, a coolness that was not threatening but aware. The castle's shadow had not vanished. It had only changed. Hermione noticed the way he lingered near the windows, gazing out across the dark lake. "You still think about it," she said softly one evening. Harry nodded. Umbra was never gone. It's part of this place now. Maybe part of me too. Hermione smiled faintly. Light and shadow, remember? You taught it its place. Ron, sprawled in an armchair, muttered, "I'd rather it stayed in its place, preferably behind a nice thick wall." They laughed, but it was a weary kind of laughter, born not of fear but memory. The peace lasted until the first day of summer term, when a strange scent filled the halls. It was faint, almost pleasant, a trace of candle smoke and old parchment, but it carried through every corridor. The portraits stirred, sniffing the air. Professor McGonagall was the first to notice the change. "It's coming from below," she told Harry grimly. The wards hummed strangely again. Harry felt the old unease rise. The heart? Yes. The castle's balance might be shifting. It could be nothing, but I want you, Miss Granger, and Mr. Weasley to see for yourselves. You've earned that right. They descended once more through the hidden stair, their footsteps echoing on stone worn smooth by centuries. When they reached the chamber, the heart stood radiant and still, but the air had changed. The glow was steady, yet threaded with faint patterns that pulsed like veins. Hermione frowned. "That's new. It's alive in a different way." Ron stepped closer, squinting. "Looks like it's breathing." Indeed, the sphere seemed to expand and contract faintly, as though drawing in the air of the chamber. Then a soft whisper brushed through their minds, not words but a feeling, calm, familiar, and oddly warm. Harry exhaled. "It's aware of us." Hermione turned her wand toward the ceiling. "That makes sense." The castle's memory was restored. Umbra merged back into its heart. It might actually feel now. The whisper returned, stronger. The light of the sphere brightened, then dimmed again like the pulse of a living creature. Ron backed away uneasily. "Right. So Hogwarts is alive now. Great. Next thing you know, it'll start giving detentions." But Harry was transfixed. He could feel the castle's heartbeat echoing in his chest, the same rhythm that had haunted him since Umbra first spoke. Then faintly, the air around them shimmered. A shadow stretched along the floor, his own but longer, its edges silvered with light. It moved when he moved, but it seemed more solid now, more deliberate. Hermione noticed. "Harry." He raised a hand, watching the shadow mirror it perfectly. Yet he no longer felt fear. Instead, a strange understanding flowed through him, the same feeling he'd had when he told Umbra he saw it. The whisper came again, this time clear enough to form words. "We remember." Hermione's eyes widened. "It's speaking." Ron stepped behind her. "That's comforting." The voice was not Umbra's, not truly. It was softer, layered, the combined echo of countless lives who had walked the halls. "We remember those who stood in light and in shade. We are the stone and the shadow. We are Hogwarts." Then, as suddenly as it came, the glow steadied, the whisper faded. The chamber fell silent once more. The following weeks passed quietly. Exams drew near, students complained as always, and even Peeves seemed content to cause only minor havoc. Yet small changes rippled through the castle. The staircases shifted more gently now, never trapping anyone. The room of requirement, long dormant, began to appear again, offering students comfort rather than danger. The very air carried a sense of harmony, a rare, perfect balance. And yet beneath it all, Harry felt watched, not by malice but by guardianship. The shadow of the castle seemed to follow him wherever he went, its presence woven through sunlight and laughter alike. Once, as he crossed the courtyard at dusk, he thought he heard footsteps matching his own. He turned, expecting Hermione or Ron, but saw only his shadow stretching along upon the flagstones. It inclined almost imperceptibly like a bow. Harry smiled. At the end of term, McGonagall invited them to her office. The shelves were stacked with books older than any of them could guess, and the portraits of past headmasters murmured among themselves. Phineas Nigellus's painted face smirked from his frame. "So, Potter, you have mended what I once broke. Not bad for a boy who never read a single treatise on arcane construction." Harry raised an eyebrow. "I'll take that as a compliment." McGonagall's mouth twitched in the ghost of a smile. "It is one. And more than that, you've helped the castle find its equilibrium again. Whatever else may come, Hogwarts stands whole." Hermione asked, "Will the shadow remain?" The headmistress nodded. "It will, but not as a threat. It is part of the castle's essence now, its conscience, if you like. Light and dark in accord." Ron looked relieved. "So no more living shadows attacking students?" "I should hope not," McGonagall said dryly. "Though perhaps now and again the torches will flicker. Hogwarts has always liked to remind us who truly rules these halls." As they left her office, the last rays of sunset spilled across the marble floor, painting it gold. Harry paused, watching the light stretch into the corridor, and how within it the shadows moved in perfect rhythm with the glow. That night, unable to sleep, he wandered alone through the castle. The air was still and cool, the moon casting silver over the staircases. He found himself in the great hall, empty and vast, the enchanted ceiling reflecting a sky full of stars. He stood at its center, listening. There, a hum, faint but unmistakable. The same sound he'd heard deep below the castle, the same rhythm as his own heart. He spoke softly into the silence. "Are you there?" The torches along the walls flickered once. A shadow rippled across the far wall, not his own, but familiar all the same. Tall, indistinct, a shape woven of darkness and moonlight. Umbra's voice, no, the castle's voice, whispered back, "We are always here." Harry nodded. "Keep watch then." Always. The The shadow dissolved into the walls, and the great hall fell still. Harry lingered a while longer, breathing in the peace that filled the ancient stones. When he finally turned to go, he felt it again. That subtle presence at his side, unseen yet steady. The castle walked with him, its silent guardian, its living heart. And as the doors closed behind him, Hogwarts exhaled, a single deep sigh that carried through the corridors like a lullaby. Light and shadow together at last. Summer dawn bright over the castle. The air was clear, the lake shone like polished glass, and sunlight spilled in great golden pools through the high windows of Hogwarts. For the first time in what felt like years, the old stones seemed to smile. The scent of blooming grass drifted through open doors. Laughter echoed again across the grounds, and yet, though peace reigned, there was a sense that something vast had settled beneath the quiet, a presence, not of threat, but of watching. The castle had grown aware of itself. Harry could feel it in every breath of wind that stirred the banners, in every faint hum that trembled through the floor when he walked. It was as though Hogwarts whispered now, not in menace but in understanding, a being reborn, at last reconciled with its own shadow. The students left one by one, trunks rolling, owls circling overhead. Ron departed with his family waving cheerfully from the carriages. Hermione lingered to the end, as always, double-checking her lists, quills, and parchment. "You'll stay a little longer?" she asked. Harry nodded. "Just to see the place off properly." She smiled. "Of course you will." When she was gone, the castle was still. Even the ghosts seemed to drift more softly, as though lulled by the sunlit peace. Harry wandered. He traced the familiar paths through empty classrooms, through the library, where dust motes floated like stars, through the courtyards, where the grass grew thick and bright. Every corridor seemed deeper now, every shadow gentler. He ended at the great hall. Its vast doors were open, the ceiling mirroring a clear blue sky. He stood there a long while, letting the silence fill him. Then he heard it, the faintest murmur like the echo of wind through ancient stone. "Harry." He turned. A shape was forming at the far end of the hall near the dais where once the teacher's table had stood. It was not solid, not entirely, but woven from both light and shadow. The silhouette wavered like a reflection on water, tall and slender, neither wholly man nor ghost. He knew the voice. "Umbra," he said quietly. The figure inclined its head. "You have not forgotten me." "How could I?" Harry stepped closer, but not in fear. "You're part of this place now, part of everything." The figure's voice was a whisper that filled the entire hall. "You mended what was broken. Yet I remain, to remember as all shadows do. Hogwarts sleeps easier for it." Harry hesitated. "Why appear now?" "To thank you." Those two words struck him harder than any spell. Umbra continued, its form brightening slightly. "For centuries, I existed only as the memory of fear, but you looked upon me without turning away. You gave me purpose again. Now the castle breathes, whole at last. I am its echo, no longer its wound." Harry nodded slowly. "Then this is goodbye." Umbra's outline wavered. There are no goodbyes between light and shadow. Where one walks, the other follows. When Hogwarts calls again, I will be here. The light shifted, and for a heartbeat, Umbra seemed almost human, a faint reflection of all who had loved this place. Dumbledore's calm eyes, McGonagall's steady grace, the spark of courage in every student who had walked these halls. Then the shape dissolved, and the hall was empty once more. But the air carried warmth. Later that evening, Harry walked the grounds one last time. The forbidden forest loomed, dark and peaceful. The whomping willow stood still, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The castle behind him glowed with amber light, each window a heartbeat of gold. He paused at the edge of the lake, watching the ripples spread where the giant squid surfaced lazily. His reflection shimmered beside the reflection of the castle, a single figure mirrored in stone and water. As the sun sank lower, his shadow stretched long beside him, dark against the shining grass. It reached the water's edge where it touched the reflection of Hogwarts, and for an instant the two shadows merged, his and the castle's, one upon the other. He felt it then, a quiet pulse of magic, deep and familiar, like the brush of a friendly hand. "Still watching," he murmured. The wind answered softly through the reeds. He turned toward the castle once more. The towers gleamed red and gold in the sunset, and the old stones seemed to breathe out a sigh of contentment. Somewhere deep within, the heart pulsed, steady and strong, its light twined forever with its shadow. And Harry understood. The darkness had never been evil, only forgotten. He smiled, the kind of smile that comes after long battle and long peace. Then with one last glance at the castle that had raised him, he whispered, "Keep them safe." The breeze stirred again, as if in promise. Years passed. The war faded into history, its scars softened by time. Children came and went, laughter filled the halls anew, and professors told stories of the boy who lived, who once saved both the world and the castle itself. But some stories were not told aloud. Sometimes, late at night, when a young witch or wizard lingered studying by candlelight, the flame would flicker and a shadow would cross the wall, gentle, shapeless, but warm. It would lean close, and a faint whisper might drift through the air, half dream, half breath. "Courage, little one. You are not alone." And if they looked up then, they might see the faint shimmer of silver light tracing the stones, a heartbeat deep within Hogwarts, pulsing through every corridor, every step, every whisper. The teachers said it was the castle breathing. They were right. On the eve of another summer, Harry returned, older now, his hair touched with gray. The castle welcomed him with quiet joy, torches kindling as he walked. He paused before the great hall once more, running a hand along the familiar stone. The silence wrapped around him like an old friend. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "You kept your promise." From somewhere deep within the walls came a faint hum, a note of agreement. He smiled. "Good, I never doubted you." Outside, the lake mirrored the evening sky. The stars shimmered upon its surface like scattered silver. For a moment, the reflection wavered, and beside the shimmer of starlight, he saw another shape, faint, shifting, watching. The shadow bowed as it always had, and the man who had once been a boy beneath its care bowed in return. Then he turned and walked back through the open doors, the castle's soft light following him step for step until he vanished into its glow. Hogwarts stood quiet beneath the moon, eternal and unyielding. In its depths, the heart glowed, gold and silver, light and shadow in perfect union. The magic of the founders, the courage of its students, the memory of every voice that had ever called it home, all pulsed within that single core. And when the wind swept across the battlements, it carried a whisper that would never fade. Light and shadow, courage and fear, together we endure. For Hogwarts was no longer merely a school. It was a living legend bound by memory and love, and its shadow, once feared, now watched faithfully through every age to come.
Thank you.